What is happening? It is another edition of All Eyes on Cleveland. Tonight we are doing a Browns preseason react show with the one and only Ellis Williams of Cleveland.com to the man next to me. How we doing tonight, Ellis?
I'm doing well, Brad. Happy to be back on.
Happy to have you on, sir. Today is August 17th, the year 2021. The Browns had practice today, a little bit of light work. We get light work tomorrow, and then we get the Giants joint practice later this week. We'll hit on that here momentarily. But we had some good news today, and I want to start off with that, Ellis. It is under my understanding, or in my understanding, that Ronnie Harrison and Grant Delpit both were back on the field today. A little bit, right?
Yeah, they saw a limited return today. Ronnie and Grant both took turns in a full team session and a 7-on-7 session. It was the first two parts of practice. Of course, they were involved in individual drills early, and then you usually see them taper off. But today they were in there for a full team session and a full 7-on-7 session. And actually, I saw John Johnson, Grant Delpit, and Ronnie Harrison all on the field at the same time during a 7-on-7 rep.
That is outstanding news right there. That's what I wanted to hear.
I figured fans would like to hear that, and that's what probably the perfect version of this Joe Woods defense is, right? 3 safeties on the field, keeping quarterbacks guessing, and we got our first tease of that today.
Now that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's what he wants to do, right? I mean, that's what he said. He wants to run whatever 400 snaps of dime or something absurd like that with those guys, and it's got to start somewhere, right? 8 reps up to this point, or team reps up to this point for Grant Delpit. Now, how do you think that tapers into this action with the Giants? Do you think they'll be easy with these guys? They've been very safe, and they've gone at a very slow pace, and I think that's the way to handle it. Do you think that they'll get Delpit and Ronnie involved in this stuff on Thursday, Friday?
Yep, correct. Yeah, I think they're going to see some action. This team has a very concrete plan with how they bring guys back from injury. For example, on Saturday night, Ellis Williams and Chris Hubbard, both guys coming back from tough injuries from a year ago, both very different injuries. Greedy, of course, dealing with the shoulder, and Chris with a knee, but both only played about 18 or 19 snaps against the Jaguars. That just tells you that there's a pitch count. There's rhyme and reason to all this. They're not going on feel or asking guys for their advice. They've got a whole medical team behind them that makes these decisions. And then Kevin Stefanski, Joe Woods, just play them the snap count that they're allotted, and the players have to be cool with that. That's exactly what we saw on Saturday, like I said, with Greedy and Chris Hubbard. It's what we saw today, as I just shared that nugget regarding the 3 safeties, which is why you can probably expect a taper into Thursday and Friday and into the second preseason game for those safeties. And it might be different for Ronnie than it is Grant. They're all going to come back in their own time, their own case-by-case basis. But as long as we see the reps continue to increase, it's a great sign.
Yeah, I think so too. Good timing for them to come back. This seems like he would, at this point, Delpit may have enough time to be ready for week 1. I don't want to say for sure, but at least gives him a shot, I think, at this point. The other one that everybody was always asking about is OBJ, and it would appear to me, Ellis, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that they're going to continue to be very careful with him, and I would be shocked if he sees live reps against the Giants. Do you agree with that or not?
I completely agree with it. They're at a point with Odell that they're at with Jadeveon Clowney, it seems like. There's nothing to prove, and the risk is not worth the slightest reward. That is probably just chemistry at this point if we're talking about Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield. I urge Browns fans to be patient with Odell through the month of September. Don't expect much from him these next 2 days with the Giants in town. Don't expect much at all, anything from him, even a sight of him in full pads during the preseason. Even week 1 in Kansas City, things might take a little bit for him to get rolling. Maybe he only plays 65% of the snaps. What fans need to keep in mind is this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, meaning they're much more concerned with how they're playing in mid-October, after Thanksgiving, into December. Those important key moments in the calendar when you want to start hitting your stride. Remember, the Browns have a week 2 game against the Houston Texans. Kevin Stefanski will never admit this, but I'm willing to call that the 4th preseason game, if you will. I'm willing to call that the 4th preseason game. So even if things don't get up to speed in Kansas City. They got that Texans game at home. And
Yep.
then being from Minnesota, I'm comfortable even saying this. They are in Minnesota in week 4. That's a stadium that is enclosed, great for passing the football. And the Vikings have some real question marks at cornerback right now between week 2, week 4, and really that whole month of September. I think that's when we're going to see Odell get revved up. And then into the month of October, this preseason stuff, we're not going to see much of them.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. It makes total sense to me. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland with our Browns preseason react with the very terrific and tremendous Ellis Williams from Cleveland.com, and I've been following all of your work, Ellis, at camp and on your guys' podcast. You guys have been fantastic, so
Appreciate that.
I commend you guys for your work on all that. Let's go back to Saturday night. First thing that jumped out to me, and you tell me what you think, is professional performance from the first teamers that did play all the way down to the last guys on that are on the roster at this point. They all were professional. They all looked well coached. I mean, it was a very business-like trip, and I was like, this is so Kevin Stefanski stamped. Like, I don't think you could ask for much more as far as the way they handled their business.
Yeah, I didn't see many penalty flags, if I'm remembering right. Maybe only 2 or 3 things of laundry on the ground. It's really a testament to the job that Kevin Stefanski on down do with these players, whether, like you said, whether you're Baker Mayfield, an Odell who's not dressed, all the way down to, Johnny Stanton, carrying the ball for a handful of times there at the end. And, they had a 20-play, 10-minute drive that went 89 yards and scored a touchdown. That's as professional offensively as it gets. The defense held Jacksonville to a shutout up through the fourth quarter, only 129 yards to the first half. It was a Browns team that, though it was the first week of the preseason, had the aliens come down and just watch. They could have thought that was a week 1 game and perhaps maybe a playoff game aside from the competition and who was on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of these guys. I mean, rookies, youthful guys on this team, and they showed out really good performances from guys all over the field. Let's start with the big one. Jeremiah Owusu-koramoah played a lot of snaps. But, man, was he impressive, super fast, and that's the thing that jumps off is how fast he is and how much ground he covers so quickly, his athleticism. But what else did you see from him that jumped out to you?
I think just his trust in his instincts. When he sees something, he reacts to it, and he's quick enough to teleport behind the person or blocker in front of him when he does recognize. He had a sweep play to the right, to his right, our left, and he had to take on a pulling tackle, and he shedded that block easily, maintained his leverage, and flushed the run back inside towards his help. Of course, on his sack, he was a blitzing weak side backer there, really replacing the weak side backer, which was Malcolm Smith, who dropped, but essentially providing that A-gap pressure. And when he goes, and he, again, put a quick move on the guard, was behind him, and then took on a running back who wanted nothing to do with that blitz and blew the play up. There were times where he did react wrong. You could see it on tape, and he was willing to admit it right after the game. But that tells me that even though he reacts wrong, he's still quick when he does it, and that's just a player that isn't overthinking it and instead playing fast. And that's one of the hardest things for any young player to do, is to play fast, play within themselves, and that's what you saw JOK do on Saturday. He was the best player on the field.
Yeah, he was. And, the big question mark, I think, Ellis, was like, is he going to be able to shed blocks and guys at the second level? And he did. And his quickness was he was still able to evade blockers and shed blocks and I thought that was really impressive. Question now is how do they use him going forward? I would just like them to see him just stick him at the will linebacker and let him be a linebacker. What do you think?
That's probably what's going to happen. I think he's going to be too talented to keep off the field. There's another player I think we're going to discuss later that I feel the same way about on the offensive side of the ball. But just from an athletics standpoint, I mean, we already talked about his quick twitch, his reaction time, and then just his overall quickness. He's getting sideline to sideline. He covered somebody in the slot. He is picking up blitzes and challenging running backs. He is going to just be too explosive not to have on the field. Now, does that mean he's going to be a guy that never comes off. I doubt it. This is actually an opportunity probably for the Browns to rotate their linebackers, much like they can their 2 tackle spots and maybe their second pass rusher, and just keep guys fresh overall. They're going to have options. They can go, in nickel and dime situations, Anthony Walker and Jacob Phillips. They can go Anthony Walker and JOK. They can go Walker and Smith for more coverage. They're going to have options. I haven't even named Mac Wilson or Sony Takitaki, who are both having good camps.
Yeah.
Though this isn't a blue chip room, it is a deep one full of, B talent and someone who may be ready to make that jump up into, a more 85, 90 overall style player. And right now that looks like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, whether it's soon or later, he's probably going to be the guy that separates himself in this room.
Yeah, and I look out to the future and I'm like, man, if Phillips and him could just work out, the speed together and the ability to tackle would just be so perfect there. And that's what you hope for, right? Other guys that flashed. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones, you can't not talk about this guy, the camp that he's had, and then he goes out and does what he did. Just 3 catches, but one of them was an amazing catch, and he's just been terrific from day one of camp all the way through, every day basically, right? And you can't stop talking about him. And at the beginning, I kind of wanted to, say this is a little bit of camp fodder, but at this point, do you think that he has leapfrogged Rashard Higgins on the depth chart?
He 100% has, and that was true at training camp, and he solidified that really on the first play of a game in Jacksonville, catching that 2-3 step quick slant. He's just explosive, whether he needs one hand to go get the football, as he showed on the sidelines on the following drive. I mean, he had 4 targets on the Browns' first 12 plays and 5 on their first 16. Now, that's not going to keep up when you get into the season, but this is the player, of course, I was alluding to in the previous question, as a guy who's just – they're going to have to play. And they're going to have to put him on the field. If that means more 11 personnel, more 1 tight end, 3 receiver sets than the Browns were used to running a year ago, then that's probably what they're going to have to do. This team needs to be explosive and not necessarily focus on its personnel. And it's three of its best pass catchers right now are Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And that doesn't mean anything negatively towards Rashard Higgins. He's going to get his chances, and you really know what Rashard is. He is your change-up receiver, your change-of-pace guy who is going to go out there and make a play for you, and he's going to get his chances to do that at some point this year. This was a guy who wasn't active early a year ago either. So Higgins is a guy that will be there when it counts, but as for if we're talking just strictly the depth chart, the number 3 receiver on the Cleveland Browns is Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, that's what it feels like now. I mean, he got pulled before the rest of those guys, got the starter treatment and everything, which is interesting. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland. Special guest Ellis Williams, gracious enough to lend us a little bit of time. I know he's busy here tonight to react to what happened in Jacksonville. Demetric Felton. Now, for me, Felton was excellent. He did everything that you wanted to see. He looks like a legit weapon on the offensive side of the ball. In fact, he should have had a touchdown. I thought he beat that guy on the slant over the middle, and Keenum just held onto the ball too long, I felt like.
Yep.
On that 4th and goal. I thought that was 6. I thought he had him beat. So my question is, I heard how I'll phrase it this way. Let me preface this with, Stefanski talked about getting Felton carries, switching him running back and getting him some carries. I think yesterday or today or whenever, right? What happens to Dearness Johnson? Is he expendable in any way, or are you fully feel this is a Dearness Johnson and a Felton thing where they're both going to make the roster and they both serve 2 different purposes? Or if you see Felton run the ball between the tackles and you're like, hey, he can do this, he can do that. If somebody were to get dinged, he can run the ball if we had to run with him. This frees up a potential roster spot.
It's a complicated question. One, I think, is most simply solved by saying, if anything happened to Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt, would this team be comfortable with Demetric Felton taking on key running back reps? And as of right now, that answer is no, because he hasn't taken any, right? So to me, this comes down to Demetric Felton proving himself as a complete utility player and really answering what I theorized before the game was that he has a skill set that no one else on this team has. He's a slot receiver. I'm confident he can run the football, and it'll be interesting when he gets those opportunities. But the skill set I saw Saturday was a one-of-a-kind slot receiver in the mold of Danny Amendola. The Browns don't have a guy like that, someone who can win between 2 and 7 yards routinely and play sideline to sideline like that. They have good slot receivers in Jarvis Landry, but not anyone that is that quick of twitch and can win in option routes and angles the way that Demetri Felton does, and then completely catch the football the way he did on Saturday as well. So I'm confident Felton makes his team. This might come down to a returning battle between him and JoJo Natson, another guy who is, of course, a receiver, and I thought played well on Saturday. So how this room breaks between Felton being a running back or receiver becomes complicated, and where he falls on the 53 also becomes a thing where we need to see Dearness Johnson 2 more weeks probably to really get this sorted out. But I don't think they'd be comfortable playing him at running back, which means I think Dearness is safe, but it becomes a numbers game and what might happen at return as well.
It really does. Another question here as far as depth chart goes, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of where I'm a little bit concerned here before we go today.
Yep.
As we've talked all positive stuff, most of it was positive. Richie LeCount, my man, he looked fantastic, breaking on the ball, great coverage, and playing that center field free safety on the one play. Should have had the interception. Redwine's out with the ankle. Does he leapfrog Redwine?
Yeah, it's getting tough for Sheldrick Redwine here. Richard LeCount was great. He's a guy they brought in with high hopes, and finding him in round 6, I believe, round 5 or 6, because of his limited 40 time. He ran a slow 40, I believe it was in the 4.8, 4.7 area, and he had an injury that he attributed to that. But the Browns are a team like the Rams or the Bears who have their eyes on receivers that have good GPS tracking, safeties that have good GPS tracking data, rather than just relying on their straight line speed. And LeCount's a guy who did exactly that, in the fact that he has such great film recognition and then break on the ball and recognizing what routes are in front of him, that he can get to spots before his speed may thus allow him. And that's exactly what you saw Saturday. He can get to those spots. He's physical. He's active. And the Browns now all of a sudden are deep at safety when you got a guy like Richard LeCount being your 5th guy. Javonte Moffitt is the number 4 safety right now, but was taking first team reps when Ronnie and Grant rested for the rest of practice today. So it's a deep room until it isn't, for whatever that's worth. But having a guy like Richard LeCount as your number 5 as of right now really bodes well for the depth of that room long term. Okay,
all right. So you think Moffitt's ahead of him then?
I do. I think Moffitt's just a guy they trust more overall.
Okay.
Slightly some more experience, and a guy that they keep putting out there. And he's making great plays himself. I mean, I think that if you take like the rookie tag off LeCount and just look at those two, we'd be talking about them the same. But, we tend to talk about the rookies more because they're the incoming class and deserve that attention. But Moffitt seems to have a bit of more of the trust in the coaching staff right now.
All right, absolutely. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland. We're doing our react to Browns preseason game 1 in Jacksonville on Saturday night. Ellis Williams is our guest from Cleveland.com. He's been covering everything Browns since the beginning of camp. He's been all over it all and killing that coverage. I want to talk about interior defensive line and – all right, I don't want to get into the whole Takk McKinley thing. I've talked about it. It's got the personal tag on it. So for me, he's not sick. He's not hurt. We know that, right? So to me, it's either, he has some sort of an issue with his mental illness, which he had a problem with in the past, or it's a family issue. To me, that's the personal tag. That's something, that's kind of the direction those things go. The ominous part is the lack of a timetable for return, which is really, questions if he's going to be back. Without Takk in that room, all of a sudden it gets a little short because if, Clowney's, potential to get hurt or, miss a game here or there, and if you have to run Porter Gustin out there with Garrett, it looks a lot different than it does with Garrett and Tack McKinley. There's my concern. So depth there is my concern because I didn't see a ton from Weaver that I really liked on Saturday night at all. Cameron Malveaux, he flashes, but it's not like he's a special guy that's going to win one-on-one a ton on the outside. So I don't. That concerns me a little. And then even more concerned me, and you can tell me what. I'll let you go here in a second, but I just want to get this out there. On the interior, it's like, okay, Billings was not great in his whatever amount of snaps that he played. Sheldon Day looked better than anybody out there, I thought, and he got the starter treatment. He got pulled before any of them. And then they let Togiai and, I'm losing everybody's, all these guys in this room, I'm losing my mind. Jordan Elliott, Togiai, all the, Marvin Wilson, all those guys got to play the rest of the, a ton of snaps in that game. To me, they're just asking somebody to grab that job, and nobody's really grabbing it. In my opinion. Thoughts?
Let's start interior because I think the pass rush is a good thing to end on. I think it's a bigger concern than the interior line right now. And okay. I only say that because that's where the money's made, right?
Yeah.
As for the interior, Sheldon Day has grabbed one of those starting spots. They want to give Andrew Billings as many chances as possible. And then I'd say Malik Jackson's another name to watch. He just remains under the radar. He goes hard at times in camp and then gets some veteran treatment on other situations. He's a guy, veteran status, as I said, who I would watch come, October-ish to see what really his usage is. If they can get, Sheldon Day, Malik Jackson, Jordan Elliott, Andrew Billings, that 4 guys playing with some sort of rotation, I think they're going to be fine in there. Your pass rush concern is starting to become a worry. Jadeveon Clowney hasn't practiced for a handful of days now, and that's not because anything's necessarily wrong. He's just, again, getting that veteran treatment. I completely understand it. But it just highlights how top-heavy this group is. One thing happens to either him or Myles Garrett, then you really start to wonder how this team's going to generate pressure. Yeah. I don't think now's the time to do it, but it is worth mentioning that this might come back and haunt the Browns front office, specifically GM Andrew Berry, and their decision to draft a wide receiver in Andrew Schwartz in a room that is extremely deep, a linebacker in Tony Fields who, injuries aside, just this was going to be a deep linebacker room in general. Those are 2 spots, middle of the round draft picks where you could have went pass rusher and just had more bodies up there. You look at the team like the Buffalo Bills, they went pass rusher in the first 2 rounds, adding Greg Rousseau and Carlos Basham to go with AJ Epinesa from a year ago. They realized that they need to get after Patrick Mahomes and generate a pass rush, and the best way to do that is probably having as many young and able-bodied athletes as you can rotating up front. The Browns went the other way. They went with star power. They paired Myles Garrett with Jadeveon Clowney. It probably is going to work, but you already have a lot of question marks about Tack McKinley. And you covered all the personal stuff. I'll just say that you cannot count on anything from him as of right now. That is just as obvious as it gets. If I'm talking like a football coach or a front office guy, he's out of the picture. You can't even be thinking about him. He's not in our building right now. We want him back. We will support him by any means necessary, but you cannot count on him to be available. It is that simple. So team building going forward, now you start to question with the ability of hindsight. Did we need to add another receiver? Did we need to add another linebacker? Perhaps we should have addressed the pass rush more. And we'll see. It's a long season. Maybe they bring some guys in. A lot can change. But as of right now, day 14 of training camp, that pass rushing unit is looking thin.
Yeah, Ellis, the hardest part, too, is you could say at this point, like, hey, we need to keep our eyes peeled for this guy or that guy. But the guys that you want that can win one-on-one are going to be on rosters, and there's just not that many of them, Ellis.
Right. And Justin Houston was snagged up by the Baltimore Ravens before camp. It gets thin. I saw Everson Griffin getting a workout with the Minnesota Vikings here coming up soon. You're right. If they aren't picked up by now, they're going to be picked up very soon. And the Browns don't seem like they'll get aggressive there. And they're really all in with who they got. And if they bet wrong on Tack McKinley and went receiver and linebacker when they should have at least added one more pass rusher, those will be things we mentioned later on in the year if this season isn't going the way we thought it would.
Great stuff from you as usual, Ellis. You are a fantastic guest as always. Oh, I wanted to ask you something. Hang on, real quick before you go.
Yep.
Funny stuff. I found this. I was bringing stuff up for the show, doing a little work here. Here's our show today. I had all the stats ready and stuff, but we didn't need any of them. We were on top of it.
Yeah, we keep it rolling.
Have you had any Chub Crunch yet?
I have not had any Chub Crunch yet. I saw this on Twitter. Johnny Stanton's going to buy 20 boxes. I might need to pull up for 2 or 3 of my own. If Nick Chubb's endorsing it silently, I'm sure it's a heck of a product, just like the way he runs the football.
Look at him. Is he supposed to be Batman there? What is that?
Batman's his guy. He rides for Batman. I respect that as a Batman fanatic myself. You've never seen Bruce Wayne and Ellis Williams in the same spot. You've never seen Batman and Nick Chubb in the same spot. You never know. But True. I think that's the look he's going for, and he's pulling it off well. We've got to get ourselves some Chub Crunch.
Yeah. Cinnamon Toast Squares. So are we talking Cinnamon Toast Crunch type style of a cereal here?
Yeah, he probably doesn't have the patent on the whole cinnamon toast flavoring yet, but, you a little knockoff there and put a Batman light Nick Chubb on the cover. It probably is going to do well out here in Cleveland. I'm all for it.
I think so, too. I came across that. I had to ask you if you've had a taste yet. Not yet, but
we'll
the word is... Yeah, good rumors there. Hey, thanks, Ellis. You're fantastic. I'm going to be hitting you up again soon. As always, anytime I can get you. So keep up the good work, though, at camp. And, I'm always listening and watching and reading everything you put out there, brother. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate the love, man. Let's do it again soon.
All right. Take it easy. You are watching All Eyes on Cleveland Browns preseason react show. That was Ellis Williams. Ellis Williams is the best for Cleveland.com. Make sure you follow, read, and listen to everything that Ellis is doing at Book of Ellis on Twitter. Today's August 17th, year 2021. This is All Eyes on Cleveland, as I mentioned. I wanted to go over the schedule real quick and then hit a couple things. First of all, tomorrow night, we do this once a year, and I hooked up with this guy a couple years back, and I'm fortunate enough to have him in my, email list. But we have Ken Rogers. He is the showrunner of Hard Knocks at HBO. He's the VP of NFL Films. And he has done a number of 30 for 30s for ESPN. He will be on the show, talk behind the scenes, Hard Knocks. If you're not watching, you should be watching Hard Knocks this year with the Dallas Cowboys. It's been excellent so far. It's excellent every year. But he's always a great guest. Ever since the Browns were on, and 4 years ago now, 3 years ago now, he has been terrific. To come on, and he's going to come on the show. Jake Burns is going to stop by too. We're going to talk some Browns and talk to Ken a little bit about what's going on with the show this year and any behind-the-scenes stuff there. And then on Thursday, we will have, after the first day of joint practice with the Giants, we'll have Corey Kinnan on, which is rescheduled from last week when we had a power outage here at my home. So that was why the shows got derailed a little bit last week. Couple rescheduled for this week, and we're happy to have Corey on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow night will be a 7 p.m. start. So we've got a jam-packed week of coverage for you, covering Browns camp, the joint practice with the Giants, everything that's going on there, plus our Inside the Hard Knocks edition with special Hard Knocks HBO showrunner and VP of NFL Films Ken Rogers tomorrow night, as well as Jake Burns potentially stopping by to help with that interview and talk some Browns. All right. If you want to support All Eyes on Cleveland and the work that we're doing here as we're trying to grow this thing and give you great content just about as much as we can, as many days of the week as we can. We gave you a bonus episode earlier. It's out. I got to talk with Nick Shook, my guy Nick Shook over at, you know how Zagura does it, Nick Shook. Got Nick Shook from Around the NFL on earlier today. Got to talk to him about a lot of the same things we talked here with Ellis about. But that is out. That is released. You can get that where all popular podcasts are found. A little bonus episode for you of All Eyes on Cleveland. No video, just audio. You can grab that now. This will be in podcast form as well. If you want to support everything we're doing at All Eyes on Cleveland, go to the website, www.alleyesoncleveland.com. Become a member. Support us, get exclusive content. Do it today. We would greatly appreciate it. It's in the link down below, too. So if you're a fan and you want to support what we're doing, that's how you can do it. Also, some news. We have joined the Cleveland Browns Discord, and we have our own area section in the Cleveland Browns Discord, All Eyes on Cleveland, where you can talk anything podcast, throw questions my way for AMAs and mailboxes and all that stuff. I'll be in there talking Browns football all the time. So you can go to the Cleveland Browns Discord, join there, and check out the All Eyes on Cleveland section there, which they were kind enough to throw in for me and for us, as I've done an AMA with them before, and it's an awesome community, Browns community, to be a part of. So that's the schedule. That's everything that's going on. My concerns, I believe, are legitimate that I talked to Ellis about on the interior, and just want somebody to grab that job on the inside, and I feel like nobody's really just taken it. And Willie, you make a good point here, as he mentions, Sheldon Richardson will be a guy that is always brought up when you come to this. It's the concern on the D-line is not like, it's not overwhelming. It's just, there's a lot of talent there. You just want somebody to grab the job. Like, Malik Jackson's going to start and do a good job. He's a pro's pro. Billings, as for as strong of a guy as he is, he got blown off the ball a couple times in that Jacksonville game, and you're just kind of like, how is that happening to a man that large? But Sheldon Day has looked good. I have the stats here from the game, but Sheldon Day is a guy that has just come on more than anybody else in that room. He had a sack. He had let's see here. Sheldon Day, 2 tackles, 2 assists, 1 sack, 7 yards lost, and a tackle for loss as well. Forced fumble as well. So, he was wreaking havoc out there and got the starter's treatment. They threw him off the field after X amount of snaps and let him rest. It's the other guys that I'm not seeing anything from. On the edge, I was really disappointed in Weaver. We've heard all this stuff about Weaver. And Curtis Weaver, to me, if that's his transformed body, I'm not really sure what. I don't know what that was. He was not impressive to me. Joe Jackson is actually more impressive to me off the edge than even him, and sometimes Malveaux. Malveaux can move some bodies up there, but when you're going one-on-one, Joe Jackson was more impressive than either of those guys, I thought, in that preseason game. Now, it's hard to tell, too, when you look at that stuff, because some guys are going against second stringers, some guys are going against third stringers, and so on and so forth. But something to keep an eye on is that interior defensive line. And with Tack gone, as Ellis said, you can't count on him to come back. What are they going to do for depth there? Should Clowney miss time? Should Garrett Miles miss time? Because, Porter Gustin is a great guy, great motor, but I don't know if he cuts it as your number 3 overall guy. Some people feel that he can fill that role. Tack, I think, is a level above him when he's healthy and full go, and it's going to be hard to fill depth in that room, and that's a concern. How do you get pressure on the quarterback if you're missing one of those 2 studs that you have out there without Tack McKinley? Got a comment here. before we get out of here. Ed, my man, Ed in Columbus, always watching. Thanks. Browns D-line looked like the Jags, just a guy in Jacksonville. Yeah, and I agree. Totally. John Brown, you goofy. Dub. Thanks, John. Everybody, thank you guys for watching. All eyes on Cleveland tonight. We're going to get up and out of here. As I said before, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on your way out. Big thanks to Ellis Williams. Go catch the Nick Shook interview from earlier, and stay up on everything Browns. We'll be back tomorrow night with our Inside the Hard Knocks edition, and thank you so much for watching, and stay with us as we continue to put out fantastic content. We'll be all over this joint practice with the Giants, because honestly, I think, and this will be my last thought before I get out of here, is I am rambling now. I think that the Browns coaching staff is going to treat this matchup in joint practice with the Giants as more of a big deal than potentially the preseason game with the Giants, and you may get a little bit of a dress rehearsal with Atlanta is kind of what we're hearing out of there. But I think a lot of jobs can be won and lost in this Giants joint practice. A lot can be decided here because, as Stefanski said, it's a controlled scenario. They can set up the 2-minute drill. They can set up goal line reps. They can set up, middle of the field, late down, throw passing scenarios. They can set up whatever scenario they want. It's a controlled environment. They're not tackling to the ground, and they can get guys in there. And I think that a lot of jobs can be won or lost in these 2 days with the Giants. They always prove to be big when these teams get together like this in determining who makes a roster, who jumps who on that depth chart. I think you saw a lot of movement that we sort of saw trending on Saturday night, but a lot of it was really cemented by good performances from those young guys. Like a lot of stuff we saw, for sure I wanted Richard LeCounte and thought from the beginning he would jump red wine. But now he kind of cemented that was a good performance. JOK cemented his trend with a good performance. Same thing with Felton, Donovan Peoples-Jones, all those guys, the guys that we have thought hey, this guy looks really good, he could flash. They cemented it with good performances on Saturday night. That's a huge takeaway, the positive takeaway from Saturday night. They look professional, well coached, positive takeaway. The one negative takeaway is I need somebody to grab that interior defensive line room and run with it. I need somebody that is like a B guy. They got all that B talent in there, as Ellis said, to step up and grab that role. And same thing on the edge. But the thing about the edge, and Ellis makes a good point about this during the interview, is there's not the same kind of talent on the edge as there is on the interior defensive line room. I feel better that there's a guy in there with Togi and Day and Sheldon, not Sheldon, all these guys' names, Jordan Elliott and Marvin Wilson and even Malik McDowell when he comes back, that one of those guys is going to grab that role. I don't know if Curtis Weaver can grab that role out there, and I don't know if Porter Gustin, he can play out there certainly, and he's a motor that goes for days off the edge. But you need somebody opposite Myles Garrett. If Clowney were to miss time and Tack is gone now, we don't know when he's coming back, all of a sudden that room gets really, really weak, I think, as far as depth goes. You have to have somebody that can win one-on-one opposite Myles, or else you're going to run into the same problems that we've seen in the past. Double teams, chipping guys, chipping Myles, chipping this guy, Browns having trouble getting pressure with their front four and having to go dial it up blitz-wise, and they don't want to have to do that. And if you have Clowney healthy and you have Garrett healthy, you're going to be able to get pressure with your front four. If you had Tack there, I would feel good about that too. And actually, I would feel better about the interior too, because you can kick Clowney inside and have Tack outside. And Clowney can play a role inside. with Tack gone, now that option is kind of moved to the wayside, and you really need somebody to step up. I'm done. I'll stop preaching about it. It's all eyes on Cleveland. Tomorrow night, Ken Rogers, he's the showrunner of Hard Knocks. He's done 30 for 30s. The two Bills. He's done the Deion Sanders 30 for 30. He's fantastic documentarian, filmmaker. He's fantastic, and he'll be with us to talk about this year's Hard Knocks, behind the scenes, give us the inside scoop on all that, and his thoughts on the Browns as usual. He's a visitor guest with us once a year and friend of show. Fantastic talent, and he is wonderful of him to lend his time to us. Big thanks to Mikey on the ones and twos. Shout out to Ellis Williams for lending us a little bit of time. And Nick Shook for interviewing with me earlier today. Catch that where the podcast is available. And with that, we are out. Go to www.alleyesOnCleveland.com. Become a member today. Thanks, guys. Thanks, John, for the comment in the comments here. Not calling me goofy, but saying we have good content. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. I'm goofy, too. It's all good. Goofy and good content, they can go together. Thanks for watching, everybody. And Mikey, get us out of here, sir. Go Browns. Big couple days, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be all over it. Stick with us. All eyes on Cleveland, as Troy Hill would say.
Sir, all eyes on Cleveland. We here, yeah.
And with that, we are out.